This week's open-weight news has one clear split personality, with one release so large it changes what the ecosystem can study. Another becomes a realistic local target, while tooling news makes both less painful to run. The headline is Qwen3.8, and its biggest member is a 2.4 trillion parameter mixture of experts, with 95 billion parameters active for each token. Qwen released the weights on August 8th and describes this as its first Qwen Max-class model released openly, which deserves the lead even though open weights do not mean easy local inference. This text-only thinking model offers X-high, medium, and low reasoning effort settings, while preserved thinking keeps prior traces for multi-turn agent work and cache reuse. The important local inference point is that a Max-class Qwen architecture is now inspectable, convertible, and available for serious self-hosted serving rather than only through an API. It plainly does not fit in a desktop. Qwen's card publishes benchmarks for Qwen3.8 Max, the official version based on this open checkpoint, so treat them as a family-level scorecard rather than a direct local benchmark of the download. On Terminal Bench, it posts 86.6 against 74.5 for Qwen3.7 Max. Paper Bench reaches 93.0, and Cowork Bench reaches 74.8, making always-on thinking central to the product rather than a cosmetic setting. The more actionable Qwen item arrived 5 days later when it uploaded an official fine-grained FP8 checkpoint for Qwen3.8-27 billion. It uses blocks of 128 values and claims performance nearly identical to the original model. This dense native vision language model has image and video input, selectable thinking behavior, and a native context limit of 262,144 tokens. FP8 is still not a 4-bit GGUF that turns an old card into a workstation, though it is meaningful for newer hardware. It is also a cleaner starting point for engines such as vLLM, SGLang, and token speed. More importantly, this is the Qwen3.8 model in range for a powerful single GPU or a small multi-GPU machine, rather than a rack-scale MOE experiment. The published comparisons make that distinction interesting. It scores 73.0 on Terminal Bench 2.1 against 63.4 for Qwen3.6-27 billion. It then reaches 61.7 on SWE Bench Pro against 53.5 for the earlier Qwen. It also reaches 90.3 on Live Code Bench version 6. The FP8 checkpoint had 233 likes at scan time, which is a reasonable early signal that local format hunters have noticed it. The runtime story is llama.cpp, which landed changes that sound dull until they save an afternoon. A new local draft feature reads a single GGUF header and detects whether a dflash draft should run as dflash or dspark. A Markov head identifies dspark, so speculative decoding can activate without manually supplying the type flag. Split draft files remain the exception and still need an explicit setting, while the same update adds multi-token prediction support for Nemotron and a substantial OpenVINO update. Its memory optimization switch enables streamed weight requantization and can release host-side weights after a GPU-compiled model has its own copy. In the reported ARC iGPU test, a 1 billion parameter 4-bit model dropped steady host memory from about 1,555 megabytes to 710 with unchanged throughput. Cold compilation peak memory fell by roughly 1 gigabyte for the 1 billion model and about 2 gigabytes for the 8 billion model. A compiled model cache also cut the reported 8 billion 4-bit compile phase from 15.3 seconds to 6.3. These are upstream measurements, and the host weight release path needs stable graph shapes. But this is practical work for models that fit only after RAM survives setup. The final story stays with speculative decoding, but comes from a paper rather than a runtime release. DARTree is a training-free method for building speculative trees with a diffusion drafter and an autoregressive correction head. It constructs a wider corrected tree before choosing the verification tree, rather than pruning paths as it builds them. On Qwen3.8 billion running GSM 8K at temperature 0, the paper reports 9.73 times decode speedup over its locally measured autoregressive baseline. dflash reaches 5.24 times, and domino reaches 7.37 in the same table. DARTree accepts 12.97 tokens per verification round, though the experiment used a single RTX 6000 ADA, so do not paste that number onto your own card and expect physics to apologize. The valuable caveat is that tree speculation adds compute and works best for low concurrency, memory bandwidth-bound decoding, while a compute-bound GPU loses more of that advantage as concurrency rises. It is a compelling direction for interactive local serving, not a universal speed button. The episode angle is open models getting bigger and more deployable at the same time. Qwen opens a flagship MOE for serious infrastructure and an official FP8 27 billion model for the nearer edge of local use, while llama.cpp and speculative research squeeze memory and latency underneath them. The next things worth watching are community 4-bit formats for Qwen3.8 27 billion, and whether these tree drafting techniques land in the runtimes most people actually use.